So we'll move into the second segment. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Jim.
All right, it's good seeing you. You might just want to give an idea. Now, you've been a doctor here in town for how long now? You have a general practitioner practice?
I'm a family physician. I've been here in this city for the past 11 years, but I've been in Oregon for about 15 years, and I've been a physician for about 25 years. And
just in Oregon the whole time then?
No, part of the time down in California.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but about 15 years up in Oregon between Salem and Portland. So yeah, appreciate you asking on my to come onto your show. Mostly I come here to alert your listeners and the rest of the Oregonians that are within your cable access range to understand how their civil rights are being eroded at this time. My story is a small plight compared to what is actually going on, and what we're seeing here is we're seeing that Oregonians, this involves medical cannabis, and Oregonians have voted twice to make that medication legal to them in this state. And it's now legal in, well, it's going to be 14 states here any day now. Total, one of them, the biggest being California, obviously. 1 out of 8 people live there in this country. But again, my plight is just a small picture of what's really going on, where a small group of individuals, known as the Oregon Medical Board, who does not like medical cannabis, is making sure that patients will not have access to that medication in the future.
Are they on record that they don't approve of it?
No, they're not on record specifically by saying that. They're more on record by how they've treated physicians in the past, how they're treating me at this time, and how they're going forward with other physicians at this point and treating them in addition. It's well known that they don't want medical cannabis, that they don't agree with medical cannabis. And by them making doctors frightened that are willing to go forth and do this, or by them protecting organizations, let's say like a Kaiser or a Providence or other groups that say that their doctors can't sign a piece of paper that says nothing more than that this medication may be helpful for their medical condition. No doctor in this state signs a prescription for medical cannabis. The state allows the patient to be able to do that. The physician has to do nothing more than look at the patient's records, examine the patient, and sign a statement, fill out some other forms that, again, states nothing more than that that medication may be helpful for their medical condition. And this small group of individuals, this includes Dr. Parsley and other members of the Oregon Medical Board and Assistant Attorney General Warren Foote, who are to the point where they are willing to make up lies, distort information, use individuals who, one individual who is actually a physician who made the complaint out of Southern Oregon, use that individual as a credible witness who already has problems with the state medical board himself, which I won't go into details about that. But my plight started about 3 years ago when I was helping out an organization called Voter Power, who basically was one of the main instigators of getting medical cannabis legalized in this state.
Right.
I would go once a month down to Medford and see their patients. I went down there in January of '08 for one of their usual clinics, and an individual came in that wanted to get my signature on that piece of paper so that he could possibly have medical cannabis. And he stated it was for chronic gout. His records were by no means complete and certainly did not show in any way, shape, or form that he had chronic gout. I told him that his medical records need to be complete, and basically all I asked him to do was go back and see his physician for further evaluation and further documentation. I was kind enough to go ahead and order an x-ray of areas that he thought would be involved with the gout, or that had been involved with the gout, that he thought might show chronic changes. Those x-rays showed nothing of that sort. And with as long as he supposedly had gout, which is from the late 80s, and it's supposedly being untreated during that time or a recalcitrant to treatment, there should be some pretty remarkable changes.
Is that in the bones or
it's in the joints.
Joints?
It's joints,
okay.
Yeah. It's uric acid crystals build up in your bloodstream. They precipitate out in the joints, and your body's immune system makes an inflammatory response.
So it would show up then.
It should show up if there's chronic changes. If it had been going on for a very short time period, because there are acute and chronic phases of the disease. When it's acute, that's when people come in with their big toe all swollen and red and painful. That's an acute attack. Then there's chronic periods where there's minimal of any pain. But then the acute attacks start occurring more frequently, and the process becomes worse and worse and worse. And as I told this individual that there's a medication that is available that basically cures the disease. It's called allopurinol, and immediately he told me he was allergic to it, and he could present no documentation that he had taken it or been prescribed it before, or that he had had an adverse reaction. And again, all I asked this gentleman to do was go and see his physician for further evaluation.
Did he have any physician notes?
He brought in initially what I remember, and this is part of the problem. This individual took off at the end of the evaluation after he was speaking with the people of Voter Power with his records, someone else's records, and all of Voter Power's paperwork. So everything was gone. And it literally took myself and a lawyer 2 years to get a hold of these records, while I was being asked questions, interrogated by the medical board, while I was being asked to write statements by the medical board. I had no access to these records. All this had to be done from memory. So all I could remember was that there had been 2 urgent care notes that showed that he had acute gout. Those can no longer be found at this time. And my opinion is they might be fabricated.
So wouldn't his doctor have copies of them?
His doctor would have copies of records, and you would think they'd have copies of the urgent care records. But as I found out 2 years later, when I did get the 3 single visits, one in 2001, one in 2006, and one in 2007 from the Oregon Medical Board. Actually, it was from Assistant Attorney General Warren Foote. I found out at that time that he had seen, a physician 4 weeks before he saw me. These records were not available to me at that visit when I first saw him. These, again, were not seen until 2 years after the visit. And he had been prescribed a medication called allopurinol. Now, a few interesting things about this. I've subsequently, as I said, I ordered an x-ray, or 3 x-rays of the individual's body. For the past 3 years, and for the first 2 years without any records, I was accused of ordering the x-ray of the incorrect foot. The x-ray that I ordered was of his right foot. The medical board has said repetitively that I ordered the wrong x-ray. But for his office visit in 2001, his office visit in 2006, and his office visit in 2007, 4 weeks before he saw me in January of 2008, it was always his right foot that he complained of having discomfort with. I don't know what I ordered wrong. We've asked the medical board. They feel no responsibility to answer that question.
So what charges are they bringing you up on then?
Well, one of them is that I ordered the x-ray of the wrong foot. The other thing that they have accused me of is that I told this patient to take a medication that he was allergic to. Number one is, at Voter Power, I was not there to take care of patients or treat patients. I was there to do nothing more than evaluate their records, do a physical exam, determine whether or not that they would qualify to have my signature on a piece of paper that states that, that the medication may be helpful.
You're not there to make prescriptions? Or
it says at the top of the form, it says at the bottom of the form, this is not a prescription for medical marijuana. It says nothing more than that it may be helpful for the patient. So they've accused me of telling him to take a medication he was allergic to. I never prescribed him a medication. I never told him to take it. I just told him to go back and get further evaluation. The interesting thing is that I've asked the medical board, my lawyers asked the medical board to look into whether or not the patient ever got the medication, to look at pharmacies. I know they have that capability. I've been told that by them before. They wouldn't do it. I did it. And as I found out, I called every pharmacy in Jackson County. I even called the patient's clinic that he had gone to, which they don't have a pharmacy, and it is not a medication that would be dispensed at the doctor's office as a sample because it's generic, and as you know, generics are never sampled at the doctor's office. They're always expensive trade name drugs. So as I said, I've called every pharmacy. I have documentation from every pharmacy that he never received that medication. In fact, I have documentation to show that he did not receive other medications that he stated that he had taken for gout. So again, the medical board refused to do that. The other thing that they've accused me of is not doing a physical examination. As I've told them on numerous occasions, I did do a physical examination. I looked at his joints that he complained of, and there was no abnormalities. Again, it took 2 years for me to get those records, and when I finally got the visit 4 weeks before he saw me at his primary care physician's office, what's it say in his chart note? It states that his foot was completely normal on the right side. Now, the first time he was seen in 2001, the doctor said he had gout. No follow-up, and then no further doctor visits until 2006 when he came in complaining of right heel pain. Then they diagnosed him with plantar fasciitis. They did an x-ray of his right heel. Nothing was found. He then was seen 1 year later, again 4 weeks before he saw me, and he was complaining of right foot pain. No abnormalities were noted by the physician, but the doctor for some reason decided to diagnose it as gout. Now, gout is a diagnosis that's made either with, you can look at it clinically and have a pretty good idea. But again, doing a joint aspiration where you put a needle in and remove fluid is the gold standard. You look at the crystals and you find them underneath a polarized lens.
Pretty definitive.
Pretty definitive, but most people aren't going to undergo that. But one thing you do need to do before you start any medication and diagnose anyone with gout is you need to get a serum, a blood level of the uric acid. Why would you start a medication without knowing what that was? Number one is you'd want to know definitively whether or not that patient had gout, correct? Before you started a medication. Number two is you'd want to have a baseline of where his uric acid level is in his bloodstream, because the whole goal of giving the medication is to get that uric acid level to less than 6. So if you don't know where you started at, what's the utility of starting the medication in the first place? Now, the medical board has said that I was incorrect in not giving him signing his form for medical cannabis. And they say that he has chronic gout that's recalcitrant to treatment, without a doubt. From 3 visits, no x-rays that show any abnormalities. Patient hasn't even taken the medications for gout that he says he's taking. And the fact that they haven't even done a uric acid level. And these family physician, Dr. Calvert out of Klamath Falls, who does, I guess, reviews charts for the medical board, and Dr. Yates, who is a member of the medical board out of Gresham, Oregon, have both made this statement. And there isn't a rheumatologist on this planet that would say that they're correct. And I've got documentation to show them.
So none of the complaints have anything to do with medical marijuana then?
Well, it does. Then they audited 5 charts from Voter Power. One was a gentleman with AIDS and hepatitis C that had been on the program for a number of years. I'd never seen him before, but he'd been...
Your charts, you're saying?
They're not my charts. They're Voter Power's charts.
Okay.
It was their clinic. I was nothing more than an independent contractor.
Charts that came to you then?
Yeah. Well, they didn't come to me. I went to Voter Power and asked them for 5 charts to send to the medical board, and they pulled these 5 charts. One was an AIDS patient. 2 were patients with multiple sclerosis. One was a lady that was dying of cancer from colon cancer. She was stage 4, so end stage. And one was a woman that had had 3 low back surgeries that had failed and had rods in her back.
All qualify for medical marijuana.
Signed all their forms. Medical board says I'm too cavalier in signing those. Now, it's kind of odd that I'm not cavalier enough to sign the gentleman that has the supposed gout. I guess I just didn't like his hairdo that day or the clothes he was wearing. Obviously, there was something that prevented me from being able to sign his form. Well, what prevented me from signing his form was being thorough, which the medical board has accused me of not being. Yet they've accused me of not being thorough enough on these 5 patients who, most of them had already been on the program. Certainly all 5 of them qualified for the program. They had me in interrogation. They brought up the AIDS patient and said, Dr. Dover, did you know that this AIDS patient had syphilis? Okay, he had syphilis. He's got AIDS now. And I don't see where syphilis has any bearing on whether or not you get to have medical cannabis. Dr. Dover, did you know this patient had depression? Yes, I do. He's on an antidepressant that his doctor's given him. He's well controlled with his depression. Let's see, in other states you can actually prescribe medical cannabis to patients, and this wasn't being prescribed for that. You can't for that this state. He had an antidepressant, an SSRI. But in other states you can prescribe medical cannabis. Also, the data, the research shows that it's very helpful for many patients. They felt that I hadn't been thorough enough in my evaluation. Most of these patients are pretty destitute to begin with, as you can imagine. They're not living the high life. They're not driving Mercedes-Benzes. They're not living in a 5,000 square foot home. Most of them are barely making it.
Well, if they've been sick for a while, they haven't been able to work.
Yeah. They also feel that these patients, for whatever reason, needed the $500 to $1,000 workup, 3-hour consultation. My statement to them was, number one is, why didn't their own physicians sign this? Why do these people have to travel up to 5 hours and then sit in a room for 4 to 6 hours listening to lectures, going through the process, waiting their turn to be seen by the doctor, to be qualified for this program? Because doctors, some are very frightened of being able to do it. Because of the medical board. They're afraid they're going to get in trouble. Number two is, because they can't say they're afraid of the federal government. George Bush never came after any doctors, and Obama has already said he's hands off. It's not a problem for him. So the only obstacle at this point in this state is the Oregon Medical Board. So either doctors are afraid, or they're prejudiced and ignorant of the medication and its positive effects, or they work for institutions that will not allow them to sign for the card without losing their job.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because the AMA has come out recently saying that there is uses, medical uses for marijuana, and I think not too long ago the Veterans Administration says that they won't prescribe it, but they won't get in the way of other doctors prescribing it.
You're absolutely correct.
That's two big guns right there.
Yeah, and also the American College of Physicians also initially, they were the initial ones that said that it should be rescheduled and that that there should be more research done regarding its positive or negative medical effects. The AMA recently came out, as you said, and the Veterans Administration has said, hands off, we're not going to harass physicians. And it's frightening for patients out there. One of the things the medical board accused me of is that, why didn't you call or contact every physician for patients that came in? Firstly, some people send their patients to these clinics. They don't need to be contacted, especially nurse practitioners or PAs who can't sign for these in the first place. The second thing is that most patients are afraid of retribution from their physicians. Could you imagine living out in a rural area where there's very few doctors? And could you imagine living out in that rural area with Oregon Health Plan and how precarious your health care is to begin with? And then that doctor finds out that you got an Oregon Medical Marijuana program card? You're going to lose that physician. And then you're going to be blacklisted for the rest of your life that you live in that area.
Has this happened?
It happens frequently. And one thing I'd like to see patients do, and they're certainly more than welcome to contact me at any time that they'd like to. I want to see complaints against those.
Can they get a hold of you through your website there?
It's not my website. It's someone else that's put that information up there.
It's your information.
But my email address is on that site.
Okay, right.
And what I would like to see is a concerted outpouring from the Oregonians regarding this issue to the governor's office, to the Attorney General's office, and to the Oregon Medical Board, asking for hands-off, basically, and making sure that doctors of patients sign for this medication. Again, it's the state that gives it to them. All they're doing is signing a form that says it may help them. That's what really needs to be done. Oregonians are going to lose their civil right in regards to this particular situation very soon. The medical board is already after another physician. This physician has signed over 50% of the patient's papers, the physician's statement this past year, and they take that individual down. You're going to have a very difficult time finding someone to take care of that. And again, why are they protecting these institutions? Why are they protecting these physicians? It's because they don't like medical cannabis, and they're going to help facilitate that process of not allowing patients access to it as best as they can.
They're just making it difficult for them, so it seems like that.
And then this is the funniest thing, or actually it's the saddest thing. I've been accused of breaking the patient's confidentiality because charts somehow got mixed up. I'm not really sure how that is. The patient would bring the chart into me. I would either give it back to them, and they'd bring it out to the voter power people, or I would hand it to the voter power people, which is what I did in this instance, because I told them this individual needs to get their money back. He wasn't charged a dime. He lived in the city. He lost nothing more than 3 hours of his life. If anything got mixed up, it was with the folks in voter power. But they broke my confidentiality on 3 different occasions. They started sending confidential letters to voter power's P.O. box. After the first one, I called them up. I called up the investigator and told him that he had made a mistake and that he needed to send those to my office. The second time he sent one to the P.O. box, a volunteer opened that up. Both times, actually, a volunteer opened up those letters. So my confidentiality and the patient's confidentiality were broken by the board at that point. I then sent a letter, which you can see a copy of on the website, asking them not to do it. They still did it a third time. Then, in their complaint, and a letter, or actually a letter I've received from the governor's office that you can also see on the website, they have stated that it's my fault that occurred. Now, they sent that letter approximately 2/8/08, the first time, to Voter Power. I have a license, and multiple copies of it now, that show my address and the date of 1/1/08. So what happened in that 5-week period of time? I never sent them a letter changing my address. What made them decide to do that? In addition, I have a license that says 1/1/06 for the same address and 1/1/04 and multiple other correspondence that they've sent to me over the years. And then something changed that day. They lied to the governor's office. They told the governor's office that it was my fault. I'd like to see them prove that. They can't. It's impossible.
Well, it seems to me that that could be just a clerical error. It could be a mistake in a lot of different things. But the pattern seems that, you know, they're going after you for small things. And I remember reading or hearing, you know, back there during the Clinton era that 96,000 people a year die in hospitals because of doctors and people screwing up. Serious things go on out there. And so here they are nitpicking with somebody over some things that could have possibly been their fault. It just doesn't make sense unless there's some kind of, as you say, they're just upset with medical marijuana doctors. Because I know there was a Dr. Levesque a while back that signed a lot, and didn't they do him in?
Dr. Levesque, Dr. Bogart, I think it's Dr. Morningstar. There's been numerous ones. Anyone that ventures into that field is going to eventually feel the wrath of the medical board. And as I found out, all it takes is a complaint and lies from that individual, and then the medical board goes from there and does their job to get rid of you. Now, the patient didn't make the complaint.
I was going to ask you about that.
The patient went to another physician down in Southern Oregon who made the complaint. This physician has had a real vendetta, basically a fight with Voter Power for quite some time. I am unfortunately a casualty of that battle.
You're caught up in the middle of all that.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it. I'm the person that pays the price because there's a board, and it's a medical board, and they don't like cannabis, and so Yahoo, it's a win-win situation for them. The problem is this doctor has a lot of problems, and I won't go into the specifics of it on this show, but these specifics will be presented at the hearing that's coming up on September 24th. Why this individual is allowed to continue to practice in this state is beyond me. The board lets someone with drug and psychosexual problems continue to practice is scary and concerning, but I guess this individual basically acts as a mole or as an individual to drum up complaints against a physician that's willing to sign someone's physician statement for medical cannabis. And I'll leave it at that.
Well, this, you say there's a meeting or something coming up on the 21st of next month?
It's a hearing.
Before the board or before the...
Well, it's with an administrative law judge, and the board will present their case, and we will present my case. My lawyer and I, Paul Loney, will present the case and the information exhibits that we have, and an administrative law judge will make a decision.
Is this guy a doctor?
No, he's a lawyer. That's fine. I have no problems with that. I would consider that to be a fair process if it was open, if there was a jury. But mostly what I'm offended by is the fact, from what I've been told by my lawyer, is that the medical board has the ability to overturn anything that the administrative law judge comes up with. Now, if the administrative law judge says that Dr. Dover is completely clear of any fault with this situation, the medical board can say, nope, you're at fault, he's at fault. And then I get fined $15,000 to $20,000 for this situation, and then I have to go for an appeal.
So what's the purpose of having a judge if he has no weight?
I don't know. I'm just a citizen in this state.
Yeah, it just seems like it's just a waste of time if they could be overruled.
Well, the only reason why it's not a waste of time, and I've discussed this with Paul, is because if I don't go, then that puts me in a bad light, like maybe I've done something wrong.
Once the procedure's
so
set up,
I've got to go to show show my face and show the evidence and show that I'm here in good faith. But to go on to an appeal for this process, that I would consider to be worthless. What I will do at that point in time is we will turn this into a civil case, and we'll see what happens with that. This is malpractice. When doctors can't review charts and don't understand the treatment of gout and make statements in writing as to what they think is going on, yet they don't even bring in an expert to review the charts. I mean, we're talking 3 pieces of paper here and a few x-ray reports. And they come up with chronic gout recalcitrant to treatment. That's hard to buy. And I've been to plenty of continuing medical education things that are put on, and I can guarantee you without a doubt that what they have diagnosed as being chronic gout that's recalcitrant to treatment is 180 degrees wrong. And these are the people that are overseeing our health care. And if you want to be honest about this, from what I've heard from malpractice lawyers, is that the medical board will protect those physicians because that protects their malpractice carriers, basically. There's a lot of problems from what I hear from malpractice lawyers in regards to how the medical board operates in regards to physicians that have done medical malpractice.
So you say you've been dealing with this for a couple of years and you've been practicing for 25. Have you ever had any problems before?
No. The only thing I've ever had, and they brought this up during the interrogation, was I had a medical malpractice case about 10 years ago that was basically the result of a woman's chest x-ray never making it to her physician. I saw her on call one day for the Salem clinic. I didn't even work at that clinic. I worked at a satellite clinic. She worked there. She had discomfort in her back. She was a slight woman, carried newspapers to augment her income from the clinic as a receptionist. And I x-rayed her thoracic spine because I thought there might be compression fractures, etc. She was a cigarette smoker. 11 months later, I find out she had a seizure, this on Christmas Eve. And that she had asked her physician, who was at that clinic, what did Dr. Dover's Dr. Dover's x-rays show from a year ago? He looked in the chart, there's no x-rays there. They go down to the x-ray facility and there's an x-ray report there with nothing signed on it. The x-ray never made it to me, never made it to her physician. She never asked about it. The radiologist never called anybody about the results, and from what the head of radiology said at OHSU, he should have called somebody immediately.
Well,
and
it's
so
the falling through the cracks thing.
Yeah, it's a systems error, as we call it, but unfortunately the system was the Salem clinic, and the malpractice carrier covered both myself and them, and to protect me they would have to protect they couldn't protect the clinic at that point. So what they did was they settled out of court, and I was given, without my acknowledgement, 50% responsibility, because that's what the board of the malpractice insurance company did.
You know, a lot of this, just finding out the dynamics of this whole medical field has been the most interesting, part to me is how this can all go on, and it's just over the fact that some doctors are prescribing medical marijuana, and majority of doctors are afraid to.
Again, nobody's prescribing medical marijuana.
Well,
it's not a prescription.
Other than through the clinic.
Just signing, well, even through the clinics. Nobody is prescribing medical marijuana. It says on the physician statement, this is not a prescription for medical marijuana at the top, and it says the same thing at the bottom. When a physician signs that, they're saying nothing more than that this medication may help. I don't really understand the fear associated with it. All I know is that they're afraid of the medical board, or, again, they don't believe that it helps. And I'll tell you a story. This is what cemented, if we have time, this is what cemented my belief in medical cannabis for patients. I'd read about a lot of stuff. I'd heard a lot of anecdotal stories from patients. But one day I was at the Voter Power Clinic. I heard someone come in that was moaning, groaning, and crying. A couple of patients later, I heard her go downstairs to the basement. I was grabbed and I was told that this is a very sick person. You need to go see her. They're going to medicate her down there. I went down there, and here's this young 20-year-old woman with her mom and dad, just normal, average folks. Obviously very concerned about their daughter. She's getting ready to go over to Dornbecker's because she's going to die here pretty soon. She's in hospice, which means theoretically she has less than 6 months to live. She's got a morphine pump in one arm. She's got a list of drugs this long that she can take. Not helping
20
her.
years old.
20 years old. She's got a synovial sarcoma, a rare tumor that's metastasized through her body. I saw them medicate her with 4 puffs of vaporized medication. She went from crying, moaning, and groaning to sitting there comfortably. I'm looking in amazement at this poor young woman. And her dad turns to me and just says, see, this is the only thing that's helping her at this time. We just don't want to get in trouble. The young lady died 3.5 months later. Someone might say she was faking it. Why would she? She's dying. She didn't really care to be there anyways. It was only her parents that wanted her to be there so that no one would get in trouble. She was also coming to voter power. At the top of the list is cancer. She had to know she was going to be qualified for that. Most amazing thing I've seen. I've had other patients subsequently. I've got a woman right now in my practice with breast cancer, 63 years old. She wasn't tolerating chemotherapy. I said, you've got to try this. You've got to try this. She's taking $50 pills called Zofran. They're not helping her. I got a hold of some people within my practice that are growers. They brought her a small quantity. She tried it. A 1.5 years later, she's still alive, and she's not cruising through, but she's tolerating chemotherapy better than most folks I've ever seen. It's been a wonder drug for her, a wonder drug.
It's been a wonder drug for a lot of people. It's been a wonder drug for 5,000 years.
Yeah.
You know, not just a wonder drug, but a wonder for textiles and for so many different things, you know. And the program that comes on after this, folks probably know, is a Cannabis Common Sense program. I don't think there's going to be one tonight. I think they're going to play a tape show. And I'm sure they get into a lot of this as well. And I've heard stories about people that they just couldn't stand the side effects of the opiate-based painkillers. And the marijuana helps.
They're addictive. If you run out of them, your withdrawal, you can overdose on them. No one has ever been hurt. I dare anyone to find anything in the medical literature. In 25 years of doing practice, I've never seen anybody withdraw in an emergency room, urgent care, or in my clinic for any problems associated with cannabis. Opiates are destructive. They ruin people's lives. I also prescribe a medication called Suboxone. I have a special license to do that through the DEA. And the number of people that have come in that are just addicted by their doctors to these drugs, when their doctors should be presenting something that is a legal right for these folks to have, and the doctors aren't. They're withholding medical care from these patients. They're withholding medical cannabis. And that's not right. They're doing harm. And they're also, again, they're preventing Oregonians from practicing their civil rights, which is access to this medication. It's a sad statement of what's going on in this state.
I know this all happened in the 20s because, you know, from what I understand, the paper industry with Hearst and some of the pharmaceutical companies, they didn't want cannabis out there because of just exactly what you're saying.
They sure don't. Yeah.
And it was also.
The interesting thing is that, you know, the medical board thinks that everybody just out there that has medical cannabis just wants to get high.
Well, there are some of those.
Sure. There's always going to be people that do what they want to do, and they don't even have to get a medical cannabis card to do it.
That's exactly right.
Believe me, in this city, there's plenty of people that don't have a medical cannabis card that are smoking marijuana right at this point in time in their house, and no one's getting in trouble for it. But most people aren't doing that. They're eating it. They're ingesting it. They're using tinctures. They're using balms. And these things work. I mean, we use balms in medicine. We have creams that we spread on or patches that we put on people. This is nothing new.
I use it myself for sore thumb and a couple other things. The balm works.
The balm works.
You know, and there are other balms that probably work as well, but no one's getting stoned off rubbing it on their skin.
No,
you know.
no. So. But you'll test positive and you'll lose your job in this state for that. But it's okay if you go to work with opiates and muscle relaxers and antihistamines and a myriad of drugs that will mess your mind up at work and possibly get you injured. But that's okay. You can go to work with Marinol. Now, Marinol is a synthetic it's a synthetic cannabinoid. It's the one cannabinoid that is the most euphoric. And yet that's okay for people to take at work. But they can't have the medical cannabis, the strain that works best for them. They've only got access to that one synthetic man-made chemical that emulates the most euphoric of all the cannabinoids. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
We're down to about a minute. Time went fast. Yeah. Appreciate you bringing this story, and I hope folks will follow up and go to that Dr. Dover versus OregonMedicalBoard.com.